Oh, what up? When it comes to video games, I've played countless amounts. Probably thousands. Well, that's an exaggeration. We'll go with hundreds. From popular to not so popular. However, one game in particular that I've always came back to playing is called Toram Online. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably haven't even heard about it. So, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to pretty much do a quick little review about the game and explain it. So, first things first, let's check out the Steam page. So, taking a quick look at the player count, it's not incredibly low, like 1,000 isn't bad, but it's not great either. Now, there are a few factors you have to take into consideration here though. I am recording this very early in the morning, which, 7 o'clock, don't think there are going to be many people awake at this time. And a lot of people that play this game mostly play on mobile, so that's where the majority of the numbers are coming from. We also need to consider as well, this game is almost 10 years old. It came out originally in 2015, and only recently has it been made available for PC players. Looking into the About section, it's clear that they redesigned the UI, and playing from both mobile and PC, it is very evident. And they've made it to better suit PC players, which is a very big thumbs up. Thank you developers, very cool. And it shows that they care about their game, and the players, enough to adjust the game and the UI rather than just port it over and make no changes. Okay, so onto the unrestricted character creations. Whilst yes, that may be true, you also need to consider that because this is a free-to-play game, microtransactions will exist, especially if you want the drippier cosmetics. However, thankfully, this game is far from pay to win, because the paid cosmetics provide literally no benefit other than to look cooler, whilst the other microtransactions available are mostly just for convenience. And when it comes to the cosmetics themselves, yes, they do provide stats, but whether they're paid or not doesn't matter, the stat rolls are still the same. Plus, new players are rewarded with 10 free cosmetics per day for 30 days, which adds up to 300. Kinda crazy, and kind of really generous. Now, although these cosmetics are kind of outdated and old and ugly, some of them are pretty cool, and like I say, they provide you stats, so it's a win-win. And there are also methods to get the premium currency outside of spending money too, so doing dailies or weeklies, even events, there are chances of getting the premium currency without having to spend anything. Now, when building your character, you can certainly become a tanky mage that is also a blacksmith. Like, go ahead. Build what you like, however you want. Go for whatever fits your playstyle. But is it going to be ideal to progress with? Well, that's for you to decide, because as someone that is currently in the process of leveling up 2 blacksmith characters, because they each serve a different purpose, well, I'm going to be real. It is quite the experience. Now, for the multiplayer in this game, it is honestly pretty damn good. Being able to play with random people you meet along the way, or with friends, or even hiring NPC mercenaries, though they kinda suck, unless they're the high-level ones from guilds. But overall, the community is extremely kind and friendly. People are very, very courteous. They'll either share gifts or items, they'll help out people that are struggling, there's always groups running around doing content together, and people actually know how to use their manners properly. You'll do the smallest of things like revive somebody, even when they're not even doing anything important, and they'll say thank you. So it kind of shows how nice this community is, and that's kind of why I enjoy this game so much, is just because the community and the people playing this game are just really nice, so it makes the experience of playing this game so much better. Now, when it comes to the actual guilds, unfortunately I haven't really delved that much into them, and same for the late game bosses too, so any of the late game content I haven't really explored, but based on, well, how much I've played, it's evident that I have the intention of getting there, And that's pretty good. That's a pretty good sign of a game that's doing its job well, right? for me to want to stick through with it and not get bored or tired, I mean, that takes quite a lot. So, plus, I could even do content with that at some point, once I eventually get strong enough. I think that would be pretty cool. And then, last but not least, the world and story. It is actually pretty damn good. The character development and their overall design is very commendable. The bosses, the enemies, they are very unique, especially when it comes to their attacks and interactions. They've got really cool designs, their attacks look cool, and they're pretty well choreographed. Now, some of them can feel a bit clunky at times, don't get me wrong. There are many times that I've died to stuff that I just kind of thought, that's kind of weird. But overall, I'd say the combat with these enemies is more than fine. Plus, there is a lot of different scenery, and it sets a great atmosphere. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack either. It is absolutely incredible. I'd have to argue that it's one of my favourite out of any game. Having a gander of the map here, you can tell straight away that there is a lot to see and visit. I mean, there is a lot to explore. A lot. And about half of these locations you won't even enter unless you actually explore outside of the story, which is honestly pretty neat. So the game rewards you for exploring. You'll encounter new enemies, new bosses, new items and loot. So go for it, you know? And it just adds to the world. And when it actually comes to the world itself, all of the areas feel fairly unique and distinct from one another. You have your generic stuff, of course, such as the towns, the fields, the forests, caves, temples, you know, etc. But before you know it, it will soon become so much more. There are a lot of very, very pretty locations in this game, and I will show a few of them in the background. However, I do want to keep this video as spoiler-free as possible. So if you are curious to check out the characters, the story, the locations, literally everything to this game, the game is free. So check it out for yourself, right? So going back to talking about the towns, they mostly work as the hub to meet new players, you know, to interact, trade, you know, the usual. Now, first and most importantly is going to be the player-controlled market, which is slightly different to trading with other people, where this is just you putting stuff up for sale and everyone can essentially see it. And this will be your go-to for trading gear and consumables. And then this is the part where I introduce you to Spina. It's a funny name, I know, but that is the name of the main tradable currency in the game. And by main tradable currency, I mean the only tradable currency. And it is very important and very valuable. I would say it's definitely worth taking the time and effort to understanding the market and the pricing if you want to become a Mafia boss, because Spina is very, very, very valuable in terms of allowing your character to become stronger. Okay, so onto the library, which is arguably the most important building out of any in the game. I mean, they all serve a purpose, but this one in particular is very important. So listen closely, alright? This one involves unlocking skills, and it does cost Spina, so as I referred to before with the market, make sure to understand it before you start making money, because you're gonna need a lot. Well, not a crazy amount, but when you first start the game, you're gonna have absolutely nothing, so the prices will look extremely scary. But once you start getting used to it, it really isn't that much. And there are many, many options to choose from when it comes to the skills. However, I would strongly suggest just focusing on your starting skills first before exploring elsewhere. So if you start as a bow user, focus only on your bow abilities. Or if you only use the sword, only focus on your sword abilities. Don't mix and match your skills until you're more comfortable and aware of how to actually make builds, or else you're going to have a very, very tough time later on in the game, and progression's going to be really difficult. There are also these things called star gems, and they also help with skills as they allow you to use unlearned skills, but they're mostly obtained through a gacha mechanic or by trading ludicrous amounts. so expect a hefty price for them. In other words, this is mostly endgame stuff, but it's worth knowing about because they are important from, I'd say, about mid to late game. So next is refining, which is very important, but also very resource intensive. Like, you're going to be going through quite a lot of ores. So getting gear to +8 for instance isn't so bad, but anything after that, especially towards getting it maxed out, which is +S, that can take a lot of time and ore. But is it worth it? Yeah, it really is. The upgraded stats are incredibly strong, and the NPCs are a temporary solution, although far less efficient at refining compared to the available player skills, and that is why I had to make 2 blacksmith classes. Not 1, but 2, because it's almost impossible to fully refine gear unless you either spend a lot of money or learn the trick to get one maxed out luck blacksmith and then a blacksmith that focuses purely on tech. And essentially the tech one will get you to +C, and then you use the luck one to get to +S, because there is a very low percentage of actually succeeding. So yeah, refining isn't fun at all, but it is essential. So going on to the alchemy side of things, I would like to explain more about this, but I've only really used it a few times. It serves its purpose, don't get me wrong. You can synthesize equipment, your weapons and your armor, and you can basically transmog, or mog, whatever you want to call it. There's not really much purpose in alchemy, but it's pretty nice. It's very situational though. So a recent feature that's actually been added, I almost forgot to include, is fishing. Pretty self-explanatory, and it's mostly for whether you want to just relax and wind down, or don't really have much else to do. Fishing's just a really good passive way of obtaining exclusive monthly rewards for little to no effort, apart from having to wait and do a little minigame. So fishing itself has its own set of special rewards and stuff, which is really neat. It's mostly for the people that, like I say, literally have nothing else to do and just want a little bonus. Overall though, I'm actually quite a big fan of fishing in games, and they did a really good job at implementing it and actually incentivizing it. The rewards are pretty handy, and there's no harm in fishing. It just helps take a break away from everything else, especially if you're burnt out from doing raids or dungeons or trying to farm that piece of gear. Just fish, man. Just fish. And if fishing isn't your kind of thing, there's always events or challenges or dungeons going on, you know? There's the vanilla ones or the exclusive ones that they do occasionally, and they always grant useful rewards. So for instance, you have the challenge dungeons. They will likely be your first introduction to it, and they contain a competitive-ish grading system to determine your prizes. The prizes aren't that great, but what can I say? It's something to do, right? And then later on you'll be introduced to Studi, weird name, I know, and they'll make an appearance and allow you to do challenges that give you items called regislets. And what they'll do is essentially work as a permanent buff to your stats. So you get additional attack or additional health or mana, basically whatever you really get your hands on. They're nice, but mostly just a little bit of convenience. Generally though, you're going to be wanting to do the events, and like I say, there are always events going on. Last but not least, welcome to my humble abode. Make yourself comfortable and don't mind the anime cutouts. Housing is where you can relax by gardening and crafting food buffs, and I cannot stress how important this is, by the way. Gaining enormous amounts of health, mana regen, weapon attack damage, critical rate, for literally free? Yeah, these buffs aren't small either, and all you have to do is search up some codes and huzzah, you're a bona fide badass. I would say that learning this is probably more important than everything else, actually, because these buffs are so goddamn helpful. And like I say, they're free and don't even take that much time to do. You just have to put in some codes and visit some other people's homes, steal their food, leave, and bam, you're 10 times stronger now. So just do it. So after going through all of that, I still feel like I've barely tickled the surface, and for an MMORPG, the sense of progression can initially feel really overwhelming, and quite frankly, it can feel kind of lacking at times, especially if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're building your character wrong, which is what I did for my first playthrough. And that's why I'm giving this advice, because I started as a samurai, and then I wanted to switch to a sword halfway through, and my stat distribution was a mess, and my skills were a mess. It was basically impossible to progress, so I had to make an entirely new character. That's not the end of the world, but a slight inconvenience, you know. Not something you really want to do. I think one thing to really note from all of this, though, is leveling. It can prove to become extremely difficult. And the same applies to the grinding. The grind to leveling up ratio is basically the same. There will be major hurdles, like I'm talking huge. Usually to the point that you have no choice but to play in a party, because solo progression almost felt impossible for my first playthrough past level 200. And although I'm much better equipped in both knowledge and equipment now, I'm still struggling to level up my characters. So, I would suggest play with a group if you can, or take a lot of time in your first, or I'd say your second playthrough, to truly understand the game. Seriously though, looks can be deceiving. For such a cute and colourful game that's got this PS2, PS1-esque aesthetics, Toram is bloody brutal. It will tear you limb from limb. Like Dark Souls, that's just Animal Crossing in comparison. This game is really difficult, and it's not in an unfair way or an artificial way either, which is pretty impressive for a game built for mobile. The learning curve is definitely there, so if you want a game to test your skills, this is definitely one of them. So, in summary, I personally would love for this game to keep expanding. I'd love to have the community to keep growing, and honestly I'm very passionate and excited to see what else this game has to offer. And I'd honestly love for any of you guys interested to join along, because heck, if we get enough people involved in playing this game, you know, people like you watching this video, I might even consider making a guild, and then we could all interact together, do content. You know, I'm not one to really go for the high-end stuff. As much as I love that, I'd probably end up burning myself out. But if you guys want to set some stuff up, just go for it. You know what? If it happens, it happens. I'd absolutely love that. But I think that's it for now. I feel like I've covered basically as much as I can about this game at this current moment. And although this is kind of a bit of a weird review, because I feel like I didn't really review that much, I also just wanted to make a video on this game for a very long time, you know? And I think doing a playthrough isn't really going to do much unless I play with a friend, or if I do something a little bit different. Like challenge runs, maybe, but I think I've got better game options for that. It was mostly just me wanting to bring awareness to this game, and I'm sure that a few of you will hopefully be interested in trying this game out, and as long as I've convinced at least one person to give this game a shot, then I've done my job, because I think this game deserves a lot of love, and I really enjoy it. It's such a good game. So anyways, I'll catch you guys later, and I genuinely hope that you enjoyed, so peace.